story of Tir na Og. Far across the sea from the west of Ireland, there is a magical place known as Tir na Og, the land of eternal youth. This is the story of how one mortal left our land for Tir na Og and what happened when he returned. Fionn, the leader of the Fianna, his son Oisin and some other members of the Fianna were defeated in battle in the region of Dublin. Tired and dispirited, they retreated to Killarney in Kerry, a favourite place for rest and recuperation. To raise their spirits, they took their hounds out on a hunt. A young doe crossed their path and the hounds pursued it. The men followed its trail, enjoying the hunt, but suddenly a beautiful woman on a white stallion rode from the direction in which they were headed. The hounds appeared behind her, looking confused at the disappearance of their quarry. The young woman was truly a sight to behold, with a jewelled crown perched on top of her head of long golden curls, her deep blue eyes and her full lips. She had the natural grace and poise of a woman of great refinement and intelligence. Her clothes were of the finest silk, with intricate patterns of gold and silver woven into them. A sparkling brooch secured her cloak at the neck, and rings set with precious stones adorned her fingers. Even her horse had a silver crown and magnificent gold braiding about his body. The men stopped their horses, transfixed by this vision in front of them, wondering if it were real. The woman slowed her horse and spoke directly to Fionn. "I have been searching for you." Fionn found his voice after a moment. "Searching for me? You don't even know who I am. But tell me, who are you, and from where do you come? Are you of this world?" The woman shook back her hair proudly. "I am Niamh of the Golden Hair, and I am daughter of the King of Tir na Og, the land of youth." The men had all heard stories of this mythical place, when no one grew old, and everyone stayed young forever. They had never believed that such a place had actually existed. Fionn spoke. "Why would a woman like you leave such a heavenly place to travel across the sea to meet with us? Have you a husband? Or perhaps it is some trouble with your husband that has driven you out of your home?" "I have no trouble with my husband," she replied, "because I'm not married. Oh, there are many fine men in Tir na Og, many that have asked for my hand, but none have ever won my love. None until I came to hear of a man that lived in Ireland, a brave and handsome man, a fearless member of the Fianna, your son. I am here because I love your son, Oisin." Oisin's eyes met Niamh's, and she knew that he loved her back, knew that he could come with her, go wherever she asked him to. But Fionn spoke. "My son? But why, Niamh? Why have you come for Oisin?" Niamh smiled. "Such are the mysterious ways of love. You must surely understand that, Fionn." Fionn was silenced, for he did understand what Niamh spoke of. Oisin dismounted from his horse and approached Niamh. His hand found hers, and he looked up into her eyes. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, but I would love you even if you weren't. Now that I have met you, I understand love. There is nothing more to be done about it. I will marry you and go with you to the ends of the earth if you wish it." Oisin climbed onto Niamh's horse, and they made as if to leave, but Fionn stopped them. "But Oisin, you don't even know where you're being taken. What if it's a terrible place of suffering and want? You have a good life here. Ask Niamh to be your wife here in Ireland." Oisin looked uncertain for a moment, and Niamh spoke into his ear. "Come away with me, Oisín. Come away with me to Tir na nÓg. It is the most beautiful place you could imagine. We have no illness, no aging, no death. We have beautiful valleys, tall mountains, silver rivers, and luscious fruit trees. We have the finest animals you've ever seen. We have all the wine and honey we could ever want. My father is the king, and if you come and marry me, you will have people around you dedicated to fulfilling your every wish. A choir of 100 girls will sing your praises, and a band of 100 warriors will hunt with you. We will have more gold and jewels than you can imagine. You will never lose your glorious youth, but will be immortalized as the handsome warrior that you are now. You will want for nothing, Oisín, and I will love you with all my heart for all time." "And I will love you for all time," said Oisín, and he kissed Niamh for the first time. Again they began to set off, but Fionn called them back with 3 great sorrowful shouts. "Oh, Oisín, my dear son and best friend, why are you leaving me? Why? Will we never see each other again? This is too great a sorrow for a father to bear." Oisín reached out and hugged his father. Tears streamed down both men's cheeks as they parted at last. "I will come and see you again, father, I promise," said Oisín. "No matter what the cost, I will come back to visit you." The horse took them quickly to the sea, not pausing at the water's edge, but ploughing through. The waters parted for them, closing behind them as they passed. Very soon, they began to see incredible sights on all sides. They passed impossible cities, tall mountains, floating suns. They saw flying fish, creatures of incredible colours, unknown to anyone in Ireland. Oisín saw orchards of silver apple trees and fields of golden corn. The waves rose up and took on the shapes of people and places that Oisín recognized but couldn't place. At times it seemed that they were flying in the sky and the sea was above their heads. Oisín felt diffused, like he had left the material world and was entering another dimension where time and space knew no laws and pain was but a memory. They saw a beautiful princess on horseback being followed by a prince riding atop of a silver dolphin. Oisín was amazed. Were they the people that lived on Tir na nÓg? Niamh laughed. They would not even be worthy of comment in my land. Where you are going, the beauty is unparalleled. Ahead of them, Oisín saw a shining marble palace. He thought it was the most beautiful place he had ever seen. Was this Niamh's home, he wondered? She laughed. Far from it. This is a sad place. A giant named Fomor lives here, and in his castle he keeps a queen as his prisoner. He cannot marry her until he beats a champion in 1-to-1 combat. No one will challenge him, for he is fearsome, but he will not release her. Oisín was moved by the woman's plight, and being a fearless warrior, he resolved to fight Fomor on her behalf. At the castle door, a beautiful woman bid them come in and brought them a great feast. That woman was the queen, and over dinner she told them of her plight, her desperate desire to escape, and the hopelessness of her situation. Oisín put his arm around her. "You shall cry no more. I will challenge this ogre for you this very night." Just then, the door of the room burst open, and a giant, laden down with deerskins, entered. He guessed immediately what was going on and challenged Oisín to come outside and fight him. Over 3 days and nights they fought until Oisín succeeded in chopping the giant's head off with a great sweep of his sword. The women were overjoyed, and as Oisín lay back exhausted, they tended to his wounds, and gradually his strength returned. Oisín and Niamh bid farewell to the queen, mounted their white stallion, and took off across the waves. They rode through a terrible storm before coming to a land bathed in brilliant sunshine. Right on the shore was an imposing castle that shone like it was made of ice. It was surrounded by beautiful gardens, set with streams and fountains. A party of handsome warriors came out to greet Oisín and Niamh. Oisín was so excited that he could hardly contain himself. "This is the most beautiful place I have ever seen. Surely this must be Tir na nÓg, Niamh." "It is," said Niamh. "Now you can see that what I told you was true. This land is all I promised you, and more." There was the sound of beautiful music everywhere, and the people were the most beautiful that Oisín had ever seen. The sky was a more vivid blue than Oisín had ever thought possible, and the sun shone with a gentle warmth. Every dwelling was decorated with jewels and precious stones, and their roofs were tiled with gold. They entered the castle and met Niamh's father, the king. He welcomed Oisín to Tir na nÓg and told him that he would be very happy there. Oisín and Niamh retired to her chamber, and they enjoyed the most ecstatic union that Oisín had ever known. As Oisín grew used to his new life, he came to realize that he was happy and contented in this place. He hunted, swam, and composed poetry as the mood took him. He feasted every night on rich food and full-bodied red wine. Over time, how long, Oisín couldn't even guess, they had 2 sons and a daughter. Their love was good and true, and Niamh was a true and loving wife to Oisín. Then one morning, as Oisín woke to yet another perfect sun-filled day, promising more pleasure and contentment, something happened. Oisín had a vision of his life, stretching out endlessly before him, unchanging and without challenge. He gazed at his reflection in a pool and saw that he had not changed in the slightest since the time that he had arrived in Tir na nÓg. He found himself wondering what it would be like to grow old, which made him think of his father and the Fianna that he had left behind. He yearned to see them again, to tell them of his adventures in this wondrous land, and to bask in the glow of their admiration for the life he had made for himself. Just one trip would gain him his father's blessing and fulfill his promise to return. Some time passed in this way, and then, one perfect night, as the sun set in the shades of orange and yellow over the deep azure sea, Niamh asked Oisín if everything was right with him. "Why do you ask?" said Oisín, surprised. Nobody ever asked questions like that in Tir na nÓg. Niamh took his hands in hers. "People are talking about you. Unhappiness is unknown here in Tir na nÓg, and yet some have remarked on a sadness, a wistfulness about your countenance of late. It is said that maybe you are pining for your old life." Oisín knew that he had to speak the truth. He gazed into Niamh's beautiful, trusting eyes. "I love you, Niamh, more now than ever. But I miss my father and the Fianna back in Ireland, I have to visit them. I promised. A shadow passed over Niamh's beautiful face, and her hands began to tremble. Oisín, I understand how you feel, but believe me, it's not possible to go back. When you stepped outside of that world, you did so forever. You have been offered eternal life and happiness. Is that not enough for you? Oisín shook his head. Perhaps it should be. It's what the poets dream of, but sometimes I feel eternal life to be a burden. I wonder if any of this means anything, if it has no end. But more than that, Niamh, I promised my father that I would return. I must go to him, just for a visit, and then I will return. You have my word. She looked frightened. This has never been done before, Oisín. I cannot refuse you if it is your heart's desire, but I fear for our future. Despite her misgivings, the next morning, Niamh prepared the white stallion for Oisín to travel to Ireland. As he mounted the horse, Niamh said, Oisín, I have consulted my father's wisest advisors, and they tell me that if you set one foot on the land of Ireland, your return here will become an impossibility. You must promise me that you will never leave the horse's saddle, for if you do, you will never get back to Tir na nÓg. Oisín readily agreed and kissed his wife goodbye, his heart racing with excitement at the thought of seeing his father and the Fianna again. But she called him back, crying great tears. Oisín, I implore you, please don't go. You won't find what you're looking for. If you can't be happy here, you will never find it anywhere else. But even though Oisín loved his wife dearly, his heart was already back in Ireland, and he scarcely listened to her pleas. He turned from her and Tir na nÓg, and the stallion took him away at great speed. In what seemed like a blink of an eye, Oisín found himself on the Kerry coast of Ireland. But how changed the land was. The great forts all lay in ruins, overgrown with weeds and mosses. The people that he saw looked small, timid, and destitute. The only buildings of stature were churches, and in them he saw these unrecognizable, diminutive Irish people on their knees, giving thanks for their lives of toil and suffering. How had so much changed so quickly? What had happened to the land of heroes? Oisín stopped a young boy and asked him the whereabouts of the Fianna. But the boy appeared not to understand and ran from his questioning. Eventually, Oisín found an old man at a crossroads who knew of the Fianna. He looked up at Oisín curiously. But the Fianna are no more. They have not existed for hundreds of years. Oisín laughed in the man's face. What of my father, Fionn McCool? The man looked astonished. The great Fionn McCool died almost 300 years ago. Oisín felt like a sword had pierced his heart. 300 years? Could he have been away that long? It had seemed like 3 years to him. Had 300 years passed in Ireland? As the awful realization sunk in that his home no longer existed, Oisín felt an unfamiliar emotion of pain coursing through his veins. He had known no suffering in all his time in Tir na nÓg. Angrily, he cursed himself for ever leaving. He may have eternal life, but his father was lost to him forever, and Oisín's promise to return had proved to be hollow. Disconsolate, he travelled around the country, amazed at this new breed of men that walked the land of his fathers, men who were small in stature and in mind, Men who cared only about the priests and holy books, and cared nothing for the heroic deeds of the Fianna and the great Cuchulainn. One day, Oisin passed a group of men trying to lift a great slab of marble from the earth. It was too heavy for them, and they called out to Oisin for help. Smiling at their lack of physical prowess, Oisin leant down from his horse and easily moved the slab. But the girth on the saddle snapped, and Oisin fell to the ground. Immediately, his horse bolted, and Oisin felt like a great weight had descended on him. The men gathered around amazed, where a great powerful giant of a man had reached down from his horse to help them. There now lay the oldest, most frail man that any of them had ever seen. Oisin had aged 300 years in a moment, and was now back forever in the land of mortality. He was blind, he ached all over, and he couldn't even stand. Gently, the men picked him up and carried him to the monastery of the most holy of their priests, Patrick of Albion. There, Patrick told Oisin the new stories of an afterworld and a risen Christ, the Redeemer. Oisin didn't care much for Patrick's stories and countered with his own stories of Tir na Nog and the heroic deeds of the Fianna. In truth, though a great respect developed between them, neither believed the other.